They said she was death wrapped in silver skin, an assassin who never failed. So why was she standing in front of me now, unarmed, and watching me like I was the one on trial? The words echoed in my head as the dust of the collapsed corridor settled around us. Emergency strobes bathed the air in crimson pulses, painting her in a shifting rhythm of light and shadow. Kaylin Vare. The name alone had haunted every classified briefing, whispered in hushed tones like a curse passed between soldiers. She was the blade in the dark, the ghost mothers used to frighten their children into obedience. And yet, here she was, kneeling with her hands open not in surrender, but in something far more unnerving. Patience stopped my pulse hammered as I advanced, rifle leveled at her heart. It should have been simple. Detain, secure, interrogate. But nothing about Kaylin felt simple. Her skin caught the dim light in a metallic sheen, like quicksilver stretched over living muscle. Patterns shimmered faintly across her arms, glyphs or scars. I couldn't tell. Her eyes were the worst of it. Silver pools, but alive in a way that unsettled me, like a storm waiting behind glass. On your feet, I ordered, my voice harsher than intended. The sound barely carried over the crackle of broken circuitry behind us. She rose in one fluid motion, graceful, lethal even without a weapon. Her height put her just above eye level, her presence radiating something primal, something that made the soldiers behind me shift uneasily, fingers twitching near triggers. "Commander," she said, her voice low, textured with an accent I couldn't place, but heavy enough to curl around each word. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't defiance. Just acknowledgement. "Restrain her," I snapped, forcing myself to sound like a man in control. Two Marines moved forward, cuffs ready. That was when her gaze locked on mine. For an instant, it felt like the ground tilted, the world narrowing to silver irises edged with faint blue light. Not hatred, not fear, something stranger, heavier. The Marines latched the magnetic cuffs to her wrists, locking her arms behind her back. She didn't flinch, didn't resist, didn't even break eye contact. "Sir," one Marine muttered under his breath as we moved toward the extraction shuttle. Why is she so calm? Because she knows something we don't. The thought settled like ice in my gut. "Keep your guard." "Up," I said. "She's not a prisoner, she's a weapon." The corridor ahead groaned under the weight of the sabotage blast she'd triggered minutes ago, the smoke carrying the bitter tang of scorched alloy. The convoy she'd targeted was in ruins, lives lost, data cores slagged. And yet she'd stopped running when she could have vanished into the void. Why? As the shuttle doors sealed behind us, I allowed myself a glance at her again. She sat perfectly still between the Marines, chains biting into her silvered skin. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes, those damned eyes stayed fixed on me, sharp enough to carve straight through the armor I wore in my mind. Then she spoke, voice barely above a whisper, and the words coiled in my chest like a fuse burning slow. "You have no idea what you've done." And for the first time in years, I felt something colder than fear. The hum of the dreadnought's engines thrummed beneath my boots as we broke orbit, leaving the shattered convoy behind. Smoke and wreckage floated like ghosts in the dark. I stared at the stars through the viewport, wishing they offered answers instead of silence. Behind me, the hatch hissed open. Two Marines entered the interrogation chamber, their boots ringing against steel. Between them, Kaylin Vare moved like a predator in chains, silent, coiled, her every step controlled. Even restrained, she radiated danger, and the men escorting her knew it. Their grips were too tight on their weapons, their shoulders hunched as if bracing for the inevitable. They said she could kill a man with her breath, that her blood was poison, her bones like blades. Soldiers loved their stories, and maybe some of them were true. I dismissed the guards with a curt nod, and after a hesitation that lingered like static in the air, they left us alone. The door sealed. The silence that followed was heavy, like a drawn bowstring. She stood in the center of the room, cuffed, unflinching, her silver eyes following me as I moved behind the steel interrogation table. Kalen Vire, I said, letting the name settle between us like a dropped blade. Most feared operative of the Vare Dominion. Assassin, saboteur, ghost of 100 dead squads. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, not quite contempt. You've done your homework, Commander. Her voice was smooth, carrying a low cadence. That tugged at something beneath the surface of my nerves. Then you know what comes next, I replied, forcing steel into my tone. You tell me why you tried to blow my convoy into stardust, and maybe you live long enough to see another sunrise. For a moment, she said nothing. Just stood there, head tilted slightly, eyes glinting under the harsh white lights. Then slowly, she stepped forward until the cuffs clicked against the edge of the table. I didn't try to kill you, she said softly. My laugh was harsh, hollow in the sterile room. You triggered a detonation that wiped out half my escort. Yes, she admitted without a flicker of guilt. But if I wanted you dead, Commander, you wouldn't be breathing now. The words landed heavier than any threat. She leaned in just enough that the lights caught the patterns etched in her skin glyphs, glowing faintly like liquid fire. I forced myself not to look away, even as something primal in me screamed that I was too close, then enlightened me. I said, "What the hell were you doing?" Her gaze locked onto mine, and for the first time, I saw something behind the storm, an urgency that didn't feel like malice. Stopping something worse, she whispered. Worse than this war? I asked, heat rising in my voice. You expect me to believe that? You don't have to believe me, she said, the faintest edge of a smile tugging at her lips. But you will. Soon. Before I could speak, the cum crackled with a sudden burst of static, followed by the panicked voice of my XO. Commander, multiple Vare strike craft inbound. They're targeting the dreadnought impact in 2 minutes. Kellen's eyes burned like molten silver as the alarms began to wail. Her voice was calm, almost tender, when she said, Your war just found you, Commander. And without me, you won't survive what's coming. Asterisk, the alarm screamed through the dreadnought like the roar of some great wounded beast. Red lights pulsed in savage rhythm, painting Kalen in blood-colored flashes as the floor thrummed beneath us. I slammed my palm on the cum panel. Status. Multiple Vare strike teams just breached our outer hull. My XO's voice barked back. Internal compartments are compromised. Decks 7 and 9 are gone. They knew exactly where to hit us. Of course they did. My gut clenched. Kalen had been here less than an hour, and already her people were carving us apart. I turned to her, fury boiling through my chest. You called them, I snarled. She tilted her head, calm in the chaos, the faintest shimmer of light chasing across the glyphs in her skin. If I had, Commander, you wouldn't be standing here arguing with me. I wanted to put a bullet between her silver eyes right then. But the deck shuddered with the force of another blast, and reality made the decision for me. Guards. I barked. No one answered. The silence hit harder than the explosions. Either they were dead or holding the line somewhere else. Kalen watched me, unflinching, the cuffs still biting into her wrists. Then she said quietly, If you keep me chained, you'll lose this ship and your life. She stepped closer. Slow and deliberate. I can help you. But you have to decide, do you want a weapon at your side? Or an enemy at your back when the hull breaches? My heart hammered. Every protocol screamed against it. Every survival instinct too. But outside, the sound of grinding metal told me what happened if I hesitated. I cursed under my breath, drew the override key from my belt, and slammed it against the cuffs. The magnetic locks hissed and fell away. Kaylin rolled her shoulders, stretching like a predator set loose. For the first time, I saw her without chains, fluid, terrifying, beautiful in a way that made my stomach tighten. "You just made the smartest choice of your life," she said. "Don't make me regret it," I shot back, snatching a rifle from the rack. The blast door shuddered as the lights above flickered and died. Darkness swallowed us, broken only by the red glow of emergency strips. I heard the sound, then skittering metal, the hiss of atmosphere venting. Not human footsteps, not even Veyor soldiers. Something worse. Kellen's eyes caught the faint light, twin shards of molten silver turning toward me. "They didn't send a boarding party," she said softly. "They sent hunters." Before I could ask what the hell that meant, the door tore inward with a shriek of rending steel. Something long and spine slithered through, its body a nightmare of bone and alloy. Jaws unfolding like a machine designed for only one thing, consuming life. My rifle came up, but Kellen's hand was faster. She ripped the weapon from my grip, twisted, and fired in a single elegant motion. The creature's head exploded in a spray of glowing ichor. She spun back to me, tossing the rifle into my chest like a challenge. "Stay close, Commander," she said, eyes blazing with a light that made my pulse stutter. "If you want to live, you follow my lead." And for the first time in my career, I did. We tore down the corridor side by side, the sound of alien shrieks and tearing metal chasing us into the dark. Somewhere deep inside the storm of fear and adrenaline, a thought lodged like a splinter I couldn't shake. They said she would kill me. Maybe they were right. But God's help me. In that moment, I wasn't afraid of dying. The outpost was silent, except for the low groan of its aging supports, like the bones of a dying beast shifting in its sleep. Ice rimed the shattered viewport, the void beyond a tapestry of black and white stars. We jumped blind through a fractured slipstream corridor to escape the slaughter on the dreadnought. And now here we were alone, stranded on a forgotten station, circling a nameless rock. I slammed the last of the emergency seals into place, my breath fogging in the frigid air. The temperature was dropping fast. The life support systems were ghosts of machines that should have died decades ago. Kaylin sat near the dim glow of a failing console, her hands working over a broken interface, silver eyes flicking between fractured circuits. Without her armor, without the cuffs biting into her wrists, she looked different. The glyphs that shimmered along her skin pulsed faintly, alive in the cold blue light. Every so often, I caught her glancing at me, as if reading something. Beneath my skin, too. "How long before this tin can fall apart?" I asked, rubbing heat into my arms. "Hours," she said, without looking up. Her voice was steady, but softer now, the edge dulled by exhaustion. "If we're lucky?" I gave a humorless laugh. Lucky isn't a word that belongs to either of us. That made her pause. Slowly, she turned her head toward me, her face unreadable, eyes reflecting the cold light like molten metal. "You think you've had bad luck, Commander?" I met her gaze. "When your convoy gets ripped apart, your own fleet wants you dead, and you're stuck on a corpse of a station with the most dangerous killer in the quadrant?" I shrugged. "Yeah, that qualifies." She studied me for a long moment, then did something that caught me off guard. She laughed. Not the cruel laugh I expected from the ghost stories. A quiet, almost human sound, low and warm in the frozen air. "Dangerous killer," she murmured, shaking her head. "That's what they call me." "What do they call you?" "Alive," I sighed, "for now." The console spat a burst of sparks, and Kaylin cursed in a language that sounded like broken glass. She sat back, shoulders tense. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked tired, not in body, but in soul. "You're not what I expected," I admitted quietly. Her silver gaze slid to mine. "And what did you expect? A monster. And now?" I hesitated, searching for an answer in the patterns etched across her skin. They glowed faintly, like constellations in motion. "I don't know," I said, "but not a monster." The storm outside rattled the hall, a deep tremor that made the lights flicker and die. Darkness swallowed us whole, broken only by the shimmer of her markings and the faint pulse of emergency strips. In that half-light, she moved closer, slow, deliberate, her heat rolling against my skin like fire through frost. "Everyone told me humans were fragile," she whispered. Her breath brushed my jaw, warm in the frozen dark. "Weak." I let out a shaky laugh. "Everyone told me you'd kill me." Her face was inches from mine now, silver eyes burning, their glow soft but endless. Her hand came up, fingers brushing the edge of my collar, a touch so careful it felt dangerous. "Maybe I should," she murmured. "Then why don't you?" My voice was rough, a rasp of breath and adrenaline. Her lips curved, not a smile, not really, something hungrier, something inevitable. "Because," she said, her words sliding into me like heat, "there are other things I want first." And she kissed me, not gentle, not hesitant like a fuse catching fire. Her lips were warm and fierce, tasting of something wild and forbidden, like metal and stormlight. My pulse detonated as her hands fisted in my jacket, dragging me closer. The cold forgotten, the war forgotten. In that breathless space, there was only her heat and danger, and the soft sound of a sigh that could have been a promise. When we broke apart, her forehead rested against mine, her breath mingling with mine in the frozen air. Her voice was soft, almost human when she said, "You're going to hate me for this later." "Probably," I whispered, "but not tonight." The station groaned again, louder this time, like a warning we both ignored. For a little longer, we stayed there, clinging to the one fragile thing neither of us had ever been allowed choice. Asterisk, the cold felt sharper in the hours after the kiss, like the station itself was punishing me for forgetting what we were enemies, bound by a war older than both our scars. I worked in silence, pulling cracked power conduits from the wall, while Kaylin crouched across the chamber, her fingers dancing over a shattered console like it still had life left in it. She hadn't looked at me since. Not really. Just that quick flick of silver eyes when she thought I wasn't watching, like a thief checking her prize. Something was wrong. I felt it in my bones. The storm outside had worsened, rattling the station like a drum, but it wasn't the groan of metal that set my nerves on edge. It was the faint pulse of blue light bleeding from her wrist display. I'd seen it once before on Vayer field operatives. A signal band, encrypted, frequency, so tight even human sensors struggled to catch. "Kaylin," I said, my voice cutting through the hum of the failing systems. She didn't look up. "Commander, what did you just transmit?" Her hands stilled. The pause was long enough to feel like a blade pressed to my throat. Then, slowly, she turned her head, silver eyes luminous in the gloom. "I sent a warning." My pulse spiked. To who? To whoever's still listening. That's not an answer. I moved closer, boots crunching on frost, rifle hanging loose in my grip but ready. "You told me you wanted to stop this war, Kaylin. You told me you weren't here to kill me. So tell me, what the hell are you doing?" She rose to her full height in one sinuous motion, the faint blue glow tracing down the glyphs on her arms like liquid fire. "You think this is about you? About your ship? Your orders?" Her voice sharpened, slicing through the cold like glass. "Your fleet is massing near Vayer space. My people know. They're preparing a retaliation strike. In less than a cycle, 2 systems will burn, and neither side will live to claim victory. So you sold us out?" The words tore from me before I could stop them. You played all of this, just to keep your empire breathing a little longer? Her jaw tightened. You really believe I serve them? After everything I've done to keep you alive? She stepped forward, close enough for her heat to brush my chest, her voice dropping to a whisper. If I wanted you dead, Commander, you'd be a corpse cooling in my arms. I stared at her, fury and something darker, snarling inside me. Then what's the truth? The truth, she said softly, is that I didn't call Vaer command. I called someone else someone who can stop both our worlds from tearing each other apart. Before I could respond, the floor shuddered violently, sending us both sprawling. Sirens howled from dead systems as emergency lights flickered to life. Bleeding crimson across the chamber, the console behind Kaelin flared, scattering sparks across her skin. I glimpsed the transmission log on the cracked display symbols, cascading like a language that didn't belong to either of us. Not Vaer, not human, something else. What did you do? My voice was hoarse, raw. Kellen's eyes burned like molten silver as the station trembled again. I didn't betray you, she whispered. I betrayed everyone. The hatch behind me exploded inward, a jagged bloom of molten steel, and figures surged through dark shapes in exo-armor, their faces hidden, weapons humming with a frequency I'd never heard before. They weren't Vaer. They weren't human. Kaelin yanked me behind a console as a bolt of green fire vaporized the wall where I'd stood. The station lights strobed wildly, painting chaos in shards of color as something howled a sound too deep, too wrong to belong to anything born of nature. They found us, she said, voice tight now, stripped of every layer of calm. Who? I demanded, choking on the heat of scorched metal and the stench of ozone. The reason I surrendered, she hissed, shoving a blade into my hands as another explosion ripped the air apart. The ones who want the war to burn forever. And then she was gone, a streak of silver cutting through the smoke, her movements poetry and violence in equal measure as she met the invaders head-on. For a heartbeat, I just stood there, staring at the impossible storm unfolding around me, her words ringing like a death knell in my ears. I didn't betray you. I betrayed everyone. Asterisk, the station burned like a dying sun. Metal screamed under the assault, bulkheads curling inward as fire licked the corridors in waves. The air was thick with smoke and ozone, every breath tearing like glass down my throat. I clutched the blade Kaelin had thrust into my hands, its edge humming faintly with stolen alien energy, and tried to make sense of the chaos-dot figures in shadow armor poured through the breaches taller than humans, leaner than Vaer, moving with mechanical precision. Their weapons spat green fire that melted steel like wax. Whoever they were, they fought like zealots. This wasn't conquest. This was eradication. Kaelin moved through them like a storm given flesh. Her body blurred, silver glyphs igniting in streams of blue fire as she spun and struck, her twin blades carving arcs of brilliance through the smoke. Every motion was flawless too flawless. Not even Vaer assassins fought like this. I hit the deck as a blast tore the wall above me into shrapnel. My ears rang, heart hammering, the cold bite of fear settling in my bones. I'd seen battle before, more than my share, but nothing like this. Nothing like the woman who fought as if the galaxy itself were trying to break her and failing. She cut down 3 soldiers in a flash of motion and whirled toward me, eyes molten silver in the chaos. Commander, she shouted over the din. Control core now. I didn't hesitate. We plunged through the smoke, weaving between cascades of fire, bodies ours, theirs strewn like broken dolls across the steel floor. The control chamber loomed ahead, its doors sealed under emergency locks. Kaelin slammed her palm against the panel. The glyphs on her skin flared, and the locks. hissed open like obedient beasts dot inside. The glow of the station's dying heart bathed everything in crimson. Consoles flickered, alarms howled, and above it all pulsed the control node, the station's reactor core, and its last functioning comm relay. Kaylin lunged for the interface, her fingers flying across alien glyphs, faster than I could track. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded, dragging a cabinet to barricade the door. The thunder of approaching boots echoed down the corridor like war drums. "Buying us time," she said, without looking back. Her voice was raw now, stripped bare. "And ending this war. By calling them?" I spat, pointing toward the chaos outside. "They're not my allies." Her hands trembled as she ripped a panel open, sparks leaping across her skin. "They're the architects. Every battle you fought, every treaty that failed, it was all engineered. Humans and Vaer killing each other while they profited, while they built their empire in the shadows." I stared at her, the weight of her. Words slamming into me like a blow. "And you knew?" Her laugh was bitter, almost a sob. "I was made for this, Eric. To kill. To keep the fires burning." She turned, and for the first time, I saw the fracture in her, raw and bleeding. "I'm not Vaer, Commander." Her voice broke on the word. "I never was." The glyphs on her arms pulsed like heartbeats as she tore the final seal from the console. "They spliced me in a lab your DNA, theirs, engineered for war. A living blade with a face no one would question." Her gaze locked on mine, fierce and hollow all at once. "You wanted a monster? Here I am." My throat closed around her name. "Kaylin." The doors buckled with a deafening crash. Figures surged through, their weapons glowing like liquid fire. I raised the blade, but Kaylin shoved me back, stepping between me and death. "Stay down," she snarled, her voice all edges now. All fury. They came at her in a tide of steel and shadows. And she met them with a scream that wasn't human. Wasn't alien, something primal that ripped through the air like a storm unchained. She moved faster than sight, blades spinning arcs of light, bodies falling in sprays of burning ichor. But there were too many. A bolt hit her square in the side, the impact throwing her into the console. She staggered, silver blood streaming. Down her arm, splattering the steel like molten stars. "Kaylin!" I roared, lunging toward her, but she slammed a bloodied hand against the core. The station shuddered as the comm systems lit up every channel, every frequency. Her voice, ragged but unyielding, filled the void. "To all worlds, all systems hear me. The war is a lie. We were made to kill each other. You've been played. No more." Data streams exploded across the relay-proof, files, recordings flashing through the grid like wildfire. The invaders froze mid-strike, realization dawning too late. Kaylin sagged against the console, her breath hitching, blood painting her lips silver. I caught her before she fell, pulling her against me, my hands slick with the life leaking from her veins. "Don't you dare," I whispered, voice breaking. "Don't you leave me now?" Her eyes fluttered open, silver dimming like stars before dawn. She smiled soft, fragile, a crack of light in the darkness. "They told me to kill you." She breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "I almost did, but then you touched me, and I remembered what it was to feel alive." I bent my head, crushing my mouth to hers in a kiss that tasted of blood and fire and everything we'd never have time for. Her hand gripped my collar weakly, pulling me closer as if to brand me into memory. When I drew back, her breath trembled against my lips, her eyes closing slow as the world outside erupted with alarms and the distant roar of fleets breaking formation. War unraveling at the seams. "You're not my enemy," I told her, the words choking out like a prayer. "You never were." Her last smile lingered as her pulse faded beneath my fingers, leaving only silence, the echo of her kiss burning against. My mouth dot above us, the stars burned on cold, endless, and suddenly full of hope dot the end.